This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and I've got Dr. Barbara Walker-Green on the podcast today. Dr. Green is the author of the new book, The Unstoppable Shero, A Woman's Guide to Thriving in a Resistant World. Dr. Green is an amazing entrepreneur and financial expert who's written this guide to help women rise above societal barriers. We're going to get into what it means to be a Shero, talk about something called the glass cliff phenomenon, and how she is building a world of Sheros. Dr. Green, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm excellent. And so I don't know if you noticed this, but I am a guy, you're a woman, and in the book, I want to jump right into it about how men can be allies. Let's get into that right away. Let's come in hot. How can us men become allies to women? Because I think for people, they think it's an obvious thing. Oh, well, just do, be an ally. And then all of a sudden you'll see like these people who are allies are hypocrites. So
Right.
how can allies not be hypocrites and actually be allies to women today?
I think with that, Joe, it has to do with pretty much how we socialize and raise our boys, right? So a lot of men right now today, they're already ingrained in their mindset how they are, how they behave, what it means to be a man. So, it's not a whole bunch of changing you can do with that. That has to be a conscious effort that a man has to make himself and say, okay, this is just not right. It's not cool. Let me change my mindset. But in my book, what I talk about is how we raise them and how we help boys and girls raise social capital, grow up with social capital, where boys kind of know from being young that we coexist here. They are women, so they have certain attributes and things that they're good at, and we're a man, we have attributes that we're good at, but we can coexist. So we have to respect each other's respective talents. So it comes from growing from childbirth up. Now today, like I said, for men today, it's up to them to make a conscious choice. That's all there is to it. And a lot of men there are a lot of great groups out there of men that are supporting women's empowerment and women's rights and trying to equal the pay situation, things like that. But for men today, grown men of today, it's a conscious decision that has to be made.
But you're not saying it's a lost cause for them.
No,
They can be saved.
they can be saved. Yes, and again, it's a choice, right? We all have choices in our life, and we choose how we act, we choose how we behave. Sometimes unconsciously we choose because of societal expectations and how society has raised us. But it's a choice. It's a choice. And I have to say a lot of men are getting on board with recognizing these disparities and trying to be more proactive about changing their microaggressions and things like that. But it's a choice.
Yeah, and it's funny. I always feel like this world we are really good at overcomplicating things. And my parents taught me very easy: work hard and be nice to people. Like if you start there, it's pretty easy. I mean, of course, you're going to make mistakes and microaggressions may happen. But if you come from a place of just being nice to people, that's an easy first step. I think most people know what nice is, right, Dr. Green?
That's right. That's right. And like you said, a lot of it is just conditioning, most of it. But then, like you said, like your mom taught you, just be this very simple. Be nice to people. How hard is that, right? So it's kind of automatic if you have that type of mindset built in from being from youth. But definitely, it's a choice. It's just a choice that grown people make. Adults make choices.
And this is all part of the book, The Unstoppable Shero. Let's get into the concept of Shero. I mean, I think we all kind of know what you did there. You put she and hero together, but what does it mean to be a Shero?
What it means is to me, and then what I wrote in the book through research is just coming into your own as a female, as a woman, that you're born, you're a woman, and you come into your own power, whatever that is. So sheroes come in all shapes, sizes, and colors, right? Some are silent, some are that grandmother that helps raise grandchildren and instill generational traditions in that child. She's just as much a Shero as that bold leader that's out there marching and fighting for women's rights. So a Shero is basically for me, and I wanted to be able to embrace all women in this concept that we are all Sheroes in our own right. But in the book, it's about understanding some of the societal expectations and ingrained processes that we go through mentally that stop us from standing in our own truth. So it's about standing in your own truth, whatever that might be, and whatever type of Shero you are, so that you can shine, so you can make a difference in the world and the lives of the people that you care about.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about both sides of the coin. Let's connect to like the two things we talked about in terms of like the conditioning of the young men that we're bringing up and the conditioning now of the young women. What kind of steps can parents take so these women can become their best Shiro self? Like, what are like again? It could be simple, simple. It's like my mom said, be nice to people. But what do you say to prospective parents or parents now of like developing the Shiro within?
I talk about that in the book as well. I call it deliberate parenting. And what that is when, especially talking about raising our daughters. And one of the things that we maybe unconsciously or socially ingrained in us is how we raise our daughters, right? We don't raise them in such a way that they build social capital, meaning that they're not getting the activities like boys get to be aggressive and, get out there and just dig in really hard. The way we're raising our daughters is a little bit more soft, if you will. Not that we're trying to raise a bunch of tomboys, right? But consciously, deliberately raising them to understand when you're in the room, be in the room. That's how I feel about, when I'm going to places, a lot of times I'm maybe the only woman there or very few. And I know that I could sink into the background very easily. But I've learned about social capital and knowing what it means. When you're in the room, you be in the room. So raising our daughters to be strong, engaging them in activities that encourage them to be, stand up and be assertive and things like that. I know it's a lot different than when I was little. Girls had their choice, boys had their choice. That was just the way it was. And you were more seen, not heard when I was growing up. Well, now we got to definitely break that mold. And I know some cultures may still have girls a little bit more shy, and shyness is acceptable in some cultures, but we have to break that. We have to really raise them in a way where they grab and hold on to social capital, meaning I am here. This is me. Yes, I'm emotional. Yes, I'm female. Don't apologize for those things. Those are gifts. So yes, I'm beautiful, not to the narcissistic place where you take it and you waste a bunch of time, right? And we talk about that in the book as well, humble narcissism, because we are beautiful. God made us that way, and there's nothing wrong with it. But there is a point where you can start wasting time on it and it becomes useless in terms of your ability to move forward. So I would say raising your daughters deliberately so that they understand what social capital is. First of all, don't hide it, don't placate it. Just say, this is it. This is what you have to be in order to grow up in this world today and be successful. You have to have certain mindset, certain attitude, certain moxie, and don't apologize for it.
That's great. You kind of hinted it there, but Dr. Green, did your parents raise you to be a Shiro, or is this something that you kind of developed on your own?
I developed on my own when growing up in the time I grew up, and I won't date myself. But I did grow up at a time where there was very distinct uh, responsibilities for boys and girls. Girls did more, traditionally female type things. Boys did traditionally male type things, and there was a very clear line between the two, and you didn't cross over it. So growing up, yes, I grew up in a way where I accepted, the way society raised girls. There was nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it right now today. But I had to grow into the Shiro within me through a lot of challenges, through a lot of disappointments. You learn from your disappointments than you do from your triumphs. So I learned, just growing up and evolving through the centuries, right? Because the centuries have changed. It's so different now that I had to take charge and decide for myself what type of Shiro I was going to be, embrace it, and really dig into it. It's not always easy. It's easy for me to sit here today and say these things, but it's a conscious effort. And I had to make a conscious choice that I was going to evolve into the Shiro that I wanted to be, that I want to be, that I will be, that I am.
So in the book, you talk about the glass cliff phenomenon. Break that down for us because it's pretty fascinating.
Okay. Everyone's heard of the glass ceiling, right? The point where women get in an organization where they can't go any higher. They can see the top, but they can't break that imaginary barrier that keeps them from rising any further. The glass cliff is a concept by which women are deliberately put in precarious positions with the expectation of failure. Now that it and it's so it's fascinating. You have to read it in the book. But it talks about glass cliff hierarchies where women are put in positions that they're expected to fail so that the savior, which is the male, can come in and basically clean it up later. So some examples is like Meg Whitman of HP. She didn't fall over the glass cliff, but she was put into a position where the company, at the time, the company was experiencing tremendously slow growth. She was not expected to succeed, but she did. Some not so fortunate. A lot of women were put in positions like that where they did fall over the glass cliff. They weren't successful. Either they stepped down or they were fired, but they were put into positions where they were expected to fail. So the glass cliff is about, I think, in society, whether it be conscious or unconscious, is almost a way to validate that women are not truly the best options for leadership. And it's almost like a worldwide example of why. So when they're put in that position, they're like, okay, we're going to show the world why women shouldn't lead, right? So let's put this person in here, Phoebe Novakovic of General Dynamics. The company was experiencing about a $2 billion loss in the previous quarter, and she was given that position at that time. And she was not expected to succeed. She dug in though. She dug in and she was successful, but she was expected to fail. So it's almost like put her there so we can shut them up. So they don't say we don't ever promote them, but we don't expect her to be successful. And then we can point our fingers. See, I told you, women are not meant to lead. So that's what the glass cliff is all about. And it's well studied, well researched, and it may be a new concept to many, but it's definitely a very real thing in this world. It's very real.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the first time I saw it reading your book. And out of curiosity, you mentioned intentional, unintentional. Is there a breakdown in terms of like, is it mostly unintentional? Is it mostly intentional? Where do you see in the stuff that you've researched on?
I see it as mostly intentional, and I think there's very a lot of different facets to it, right? Yes, you're expected to fail, but they also are put there for their nurturing capabilities, their innate nurturing characteristics, if you will. Meaning that when the country, let's say the country or the company is in turmoil and everybody is scared and uneasy, it's also felt that women have this nurturing characteristic that they can get in there and calm the masses, if you will. So a lot of times they're put in there for that purpose, not so much to succeed, but to succeed as that CEO or that C-suite person, but more to calm the masses and bring the emotional turmoil down in the organization because of women's innate ability to be nurturing.
I love that. I love that. Also in the book, and we kind of touched upon it earlier about the narcissist part, but you write about objectification buy-in.
Oh, yes, that's a big one.
Break that down for me.
Okay, now this one I'm going to get some pushback on from some of the millennials, but it's okay because that's what controversy is, what it's all about. We have to face things. And objectification buy-in is basically a term that I personally coined, which means how women buy into their own objectification by trying to live up to society's definition of leadership, beauty, mostly beauty, and strength. So a lot of women, especially with social media now, you see it every day. You can't go on social media without seeing it. Women are objectifying themselves, trying to create this image that society has said this is the standard of beauty. So they're self-objectifying, even when they're trying to do something productive or show something of show of strength. There's that objectification of beauty that they're portraying out there. And the problem with objectification buy-in is not so much just what that woman herself may be objectifying herself, but it's the message she's passing to the younger generation. That is the biggest problem to me with objectification buy-in, is that the influence that you have on the next generation of trying to repeat that and copy that, and it does nothing for them. It really wastes a bunch of time and puts them out there in a space where there's predators out there, there's, child, all kind of ugly stuff that we won't go into today, but you know what I mean. It's like, you objectify yourself, you're putting yourself out there in a certain light, and you're going to attract certain people into that light that may not have your best interest. So there's nothing wrong with being beautiful and want to project your most beautiful self, but there's a line that you cross where you cross into self objectification, where you're not taken as seriously as a leader. Can you imagine? You can look at it. There was one study where two women walked in the room. One was both well dressed, both had on nice clothing, but one was completely glammed out, just lashes, just totally glammed out, flashy jewelry, and just like she was a movie star. And the other one was more dressed up, looked nice, but the difference between the attention in terms of leadership, that the one more calmly dressed, I would put it, and the one that was so glammed up, showing all her curves and everything, she was totally disregarded.
Wow.
She was totally disregarded, and you can imagine why. It's more like she's a eye candy over here, but we're in a business meeting, so we have to focus on the person that we feel like is representing leadership and the type of image that we're trying to portray in our organization.
Wow. And there's probably some nuance to this objectification buy-in. So would you mind, like, show me, like, spell out an example of what that would look like for, like, if in social media, for instance, like what would that look like in terms of, because like you said, it could be as simple as someone just posting like a beautiful photo of themselves, but like
Right.
tell me what that actually looks like.
Okay. So basically the difference between the two is, like, when you turn on social media now, a lot of times, especially like your TikToks and your, those type of platforms, you see women, very loosely dressed, or, dressed very provocatively, dancing very provocatively. I mean, they come on like that. It's like, the first thing you see is someone dancing and twirling and twirling their bodies and making themselves a sexual object. That's what they're doing. They're objectifying their sexuality, and nobody's telling them to do it. They're self-objectifying, right? Versus someone coming on social media that has a message to deliver to you, still beautiful, still a woman, but coming on in a more respectable light. So you can see it all the time. It's very clear. So that self-objectification, though, that whole image and everything, it appears to get way more attention, right, than the person that comes on that's a little bit more subdued in the way they present themselves. So that objectifying person might get millions and millions of views, or hundreds of thousands, whatever, where these young, and it's mostly young people watching this, right? Young, influential women watching this, and which way are they going to gravitate? They're going to probably gravitate more to that objectification, because it's more, gets more attention. Who doesn't want attention, right? But there's good attention and there's bad attention. So that comes back to that whole deliberate parenting process of raising your daughters in the way that they understand that, and there's no excuse for it, because they understand it. It's been very clearly explained to them so that they can respond accordingly.
Nice. All right, good. Thank you for that. All right. So in the book, you talk about community building and the rise of Shero Nation. And there is a stereotype or cliche out there that women just don't work well together. They're too competitive. They see themselves as, in a company where there's 9 men and one woman, that there's only a spot for that one woman. So they have to fight amongst themselves for that spot in leadership. Um, is this just an ugly stereotype? Does it exist? If it does exist, what can we do to combat that?
Well, that's a tough one, like you said, because there is a certain amount of natural competitiveness in every human being, right? And when you're fighting for a very small pool, when you're fighting a lot of people fighting for a position in a very small pool, competitiveness has to be there, right? That's just a given. So in the Shero Nation, I talk about building community and building the Shero Nation, which is a platform that I'm building now, that will is all about shared community and uplifting and all those things. First, the mindset shift has to happen is that we're all in the same boat here. We're all trying to be the best we can be in whatever arena that we enter into. So for us to fight each other just further divides us, right? So it's all about community. It's all about, I don't have to agree with everything you say. I don't have to understand it or agree with it. But for me, just not to tear you down is the big thing to me. So you're not going to understand everything everyone does. You're not going to agree with it as long as you're not doing something harmful to other human beings or something, that's against our laws in the country. Then we have to embrace each other and build a community, because one of the things, another thing I talk about in the book is old boy network. It's just where the guys kind of after work, they go, they hang out, they have their cognac and their cigars, right? That's their safe space. That's their space. I try to, in my book, as delicately as possible, say, leave them alone, right? That's a man thing. So be it. So you're not invited to that. We can build our own communities and build our own groups and build our own way of relaxing after work, and allow the two to be separate. It's okay. So you're not invited to golf with the guys. You're not invited to have cognac and cigars. It changes the entire dynamic of that situation when you enter men and women into it. There's just some things, I think, as women, we just have to accept that some things are just not for us and be okay with it. And that's the hard part, because we have women now that are boxers and doing things, a lot of the things that are traditionally things that men do, and damaging our bodies in the process, and some of it, like, right? You're getting beat up and punched in the gut, and as a female boxer, you're definitely, possibly damaging organs and things like that. So there's some things that are okay to leave to the men, to leave to the guys. Let's build our own communities and live within our own realm of what we are as women.
Hmm. And that could be perceived, Dr. Green, as a controversial take, a hot take, mind
Yes.
you. You know,
Yes.
some people listening may be like, no, Dr. Green, I should be able to go have cigars and cognac if I want to. Um, and I'm of the theory, obviously, I'm very privileged in the way I was growing up, but that there's only so many fights you have in you. And like, you've got to
Right.
pick and choose your battles. Some people may decide to take that battle on and be like, why can't I be on the golf trip? Why can't I be? What's your take on that? What is your, not that we have to argue about this, but what do you
Right.
say is a positive way to look at it? Like, hey, listen, it's not, it was almost not even worth fighting that fight.
That's why I feel it's not worth fighting the fight. I mean, it's like there's just a place where there's a certain comfort level. Just like, if we were all in the beauty salon and we were all getting our hair done and our pedicures, and a bunch of men came in, right? You're going to change the whole dynamic of that experience. You're not going to kick them out, but the whole dynamic of that experience is going to change, right? And you're going to be looking like, why are these guys here? It's the same thing. It's okay to have our safe space. The beauty salon is where we kind of hang out. The barbershop, is kind of a man thing, or the cigar bars and things like that. There's nothing wrong with it. Choose your battles, like you said. You may want to take on the battle, but again, what are you really accomplishing?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what you're accomplishing. It's okay to have, it's okay for you to have something separate from men, women the same on the other side, to enjoy that whole experience of being around women and being men being around men. There's nothing wrong with it. Like I said, there'll be some pushback.
Yeah, and that also does create the fine line of the cultural capital that you've discussed, and social capital, because some people may then say, Dr. Green is like, well, how am I supposed to build cultural social capital if I'm not able to be in those private rooms, or be invited to certain events because of gender. Again, and then that's a big part of what your mission is about, building
Right,
social capital. So there is
right.
that fine line of like, man, I'm sometimes limited by how I create social capital because I'm not going to be invited to some of these things.
Well, and that just makes my point, what you just said. You're assuming that social capital is only built based upon the male perspective, and it's not, right? Social capital is it doesn't have a gender, right? So social capital is a mindset. It's not, you're not invited to the male things So you're not going to build social capital because you can't go to these male dominated situations. That's the break that has to be made. You build social capital in your own right. You, as women, we have social capital based upon us being women. That's it. Has nothing to do with not being invited to the man's activities or anything like that. So that is the mindset shift that has to happen. It's not contingent upon what's going on the male side.
Great. Love it. Love it. All right. So the first step in joining this movement is reading the book, The Unstoppable Shero. What's the second step a woman can take to become the Shero that they're meant to be?
Well, first of all, like you said, get the book, of course, The Unstoppable Shero. It's a roadmap. It really will open doors. It will open your mind to some mindset shifts. And that is the number one thing. Your mindset has to shift. You have a mindset shift. The second thing is when the Shero Nation is being built, to join it. It doesn't cost you anything to join it, but you will be able to experience some activities and some webinars and some podcasts and share your own experiences in a way that can uplift other women. And that is coming soon, but that's definitely another thing. And then I would say finally, is just take some of these concepts and you pick one from the book and dedicate yourself to, okay, I'm going to concentrate on deliberate parenting. And I'm going to start raising my daughters and sons. Again, this is for both, the deliberate parenting piece. In a way that I deliberately instill in them the things that need to be instilled in them so they can both grow in such a way that they can grow into their own without feeling limited.
Awesome. Awesome. And Dr. Walker, I like to wrap these conversations up by taking folks behind the dedication to the book. And in your book, you acknowledge, I want to recognize my incredible children who hold a special place in my heart and form the core of my inner circle. They are my why in life. And together we've embraced a family mantra that we call 3 Deep. Tell me why it was important to dedicate your book to your children.
Because my children are what make me fearless. They're what make me go out and fight hard and do the things that I need to do, even when I'm a little bit fearful myself. So excuse me, when I feel like challenged or afraid or nervous about something, I always imagine myself having to defend them against something. And a mom is all parents are all about defending their kids, and your fear goes away, right? When it's like, okay, I got to protect, I will protect you to the death, right? So it helps me to become fearless, but also I want to be able to make them to understand that I am very consciously passing the baton in a way where I'm trying to teach them. My goal is to teach them about 3D, which is my children's children, and looking at life in that respect in terms of the traditions, the wealth, the ideas of health. Is more than just money that makes you wealthy. So it's really important for me to verbally and consciously pass to them that this is what I'm doing, this is why, and I expect you to do the same and pass it to the next generations as well.
Awesome. She is Dr. Barbara Walker Green. The book, The Unstoppable Shero, A Woman's Guide to Thriving in a Resistant World. Dr. Green, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Dr. Green and our other awesome authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.